You're listening to the 12th episode of the In the Hub podcast, brought to you by Playbox Technology UK. In this week's episode, we speak to Matthew Baxter, co-founder and managing director of Stellwagen Ventures. Matthew has enjoyed an incredibly successful career, getting stuck in with the likes of Disney, MGM, Liverpool Football Club and many more. Hope you enjoy this episode. How are you this morning, Matthew?
I'm good, mate. Thank you very well. I'm very well. In lockdown 2, getting ready, gearing up.
Just for any context, this podcast is being recorded on the 5th of November now. The UK has just been plummeted into a second lockdown for a month. So me and Matthew got a lot of time on our hands now. So
we're not going anywhere. So
Matthew, I think we'll get straight into the questions then, if that's all right with you.
Happy to, very happy to. And good to see you this morning.
Yeah, you too, Matthew. You too. So Matthew, how did you get your start within the media and broadcasting industries, and was it a relatively humble beginning for you?
Well, it was a long time ago. Look, the media. I think one thing to say is I grew up with media and content around me in my blood. My family are all in it, and my family, from film direction to production, all my father and my uncles are all into it. So when I was a kid, I had the privilege of being on film sets at Pinewood when I was at school, and helping up making cups of tea. But I think it was always somewhere direction I was always going to go into, because I loved it from the beginning. Even at school, as you do, doing acting on stage and things like that content piece was always kind of somewhere I wanted to be. And interestingly, when you left university and trying to find your first job in the broadcast or media industry, there's a lot of people out there who want the same thing, and you've got to fight hard and go for it, find your dreams and follow your goals and work hard at it. And having family and friends in the business, I always thought they're going to open doors for me. But quite frankly, I appreciated it. I appreciate it more now than I did then. My father said, if you want it, you've got to go and get it, and you've got to fight at it yourself. I started off at the animation festival, really, the three of us, at the very beginning, in the mid-90s, creating that out of Cardiff. And it taught me a lot of things. It taught me long days, hard graft, eye for detail, working hard as a team. Without the festival, wouldn't have got on without us all collaborating together. Tough times, good times, fun times. And then as a result of that, I got a job number 6 with Enon Kreitz, who is one of Haim Saban's right-hand man, to launch Fox Kids. And again, that was everything from the beginning. It was that taught me a lot. And I'm very thankful for the team at Fox Kids at the time, because, honestly, we were doing branding, and the key point was commercial and distribution. And that's really when I began to get the flavour of commercial business and distribution of content, because we had to do the deals with all the broadcast companies and cable companies around the UK. I mean, at the time, there was over 100 cable companies in the UK, which is bizarre when you think about it's Virgin now, really. So, and that taught you marketing, distribution, branding. Even one point when the presenter didn't turn up for the live show in the afternoon, I put my hat on and did some live presenting. So it was quite fun, So the beginning was great to understand the full aspect and the 360 of a broadcast company, and the media company gave you really good base and grounding, and long days, hard graft, but great fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like a really good kind of foundation to start off with when you've seen so many different aspects of the company.
Yeah, it was. And I think what you do, and you also then realise, I think you realise very quickly what floats your boat and where you want to go and where you want to focus your time, because at the beginning, you're so young and so hungry and so enthusiastic for everything. You want to find, and then you find your niche of what you want. And that's when really I began to sort of focus on the sort of commercial and the sales and the marketing piece, and that area, and that sort of went down, that sort of followed that route, as you can see sort of through my career. The commercial side, driving revenue for any business is absolutely critical.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. So Matthew, I know we were talking about Fox Kids and everything that you got up to there, but you've worked with some of the biggest names in the media industry up to this point. So we're talking Disney, obviously Liverpool Football Club, and a bit more recently Dugout. Do you think you were always geared up for a move to kind of sports-oriented broadcasting? Is that something that you've always been interested in?
Yeah, I always think follow your passions, right? And I think if you can find, if you're lucky enough or you're focused enough to sort of find your, work in your passion spots in life, I think that's a really cool thing. My 2 passions are content, media, entertainment, and sport. I've been fortunate to work with some of the biggest studios in the world, so Disney, Warner Brothers, and latterly MGM. And we built the MGM channel up from Gosh, from not a lot. And it was the days before OTT and long tail and all this kind of stuff, and created the channel because all these films were sitting on the shelf. And, we created the channel, but I spent, 170 days a year on a plane for many, many years, like most people in the industry, the sports and media industry, right? So we travel a lot, unlike now, This year, to be fair, in with the pandemic, this year has been the least I've ever traveled ever.
How are you finding it? Is it hard to adjust to? Or?
It's a strange one because, when you're out there and you're meeting people and you're doing deals and you're meeting different cultures and you're understanding what the clients want and you're face to face and that buzz and the cut and thrust, I do miss that a lot. I miss people.
Yeah.
It's nice to be at home and nice to see a lot of my family and kids and chucking a bit of homeschooling for a good measure and lockdown one, which was interesting in itself. You learn things about yourself in these environments, definitely. Right? So which is fun. But I do miss the buzz and the cut and thrust of being out there with everybody, and I mean, Zooms are great and you do 9 hours of Zooms a day, but you understanding where the industry is going and what you're doing, I think is important. But back to the MGM days and travel and, then selling we sold that company to Liberty Global. At that point, I had a chance of a little inflection period of like, now what next? And, at that point, it was like, well, my other passion is sport. I want to go and work in sport. So I went and hunted a sport job. And someone at the time told me, you'll never work in sport because you work in media and entertainment. They're so different. And, the world's colliding and convergence. Now they're all the same thing, right? You've got fashion, sport, music industry, gaming. They're all together in one pot. But at the time, if you think about it, they weren't. I thought, what, my passion is sport and I want to go work in sport. I want to experience it. And, that was a time when, I turned 40 and I thought, hang on, I'm going to go for this and have a look. So I was very fortunate and had a great time working with the guys at Liverpool and building the media industry, but also understanding how a football club runs was amazing. And, that was sort of the effect. So was I geared up to have a career in sport? I think following your passions. So whatever your passions are, and for me, yes, sport is a passion. I love it. So whether it was football, whether it was rugby, because I played rugby at school and at university, and rugby or cricket or hockey or netball or whatever it may be, I wanted to work in sport in some capacity.
Yeah. So branching off from your time at Liverpool FC, obviously, how did it prepare you for your future in the sports industry?
It's a good question. I think I think my job was very clear from the remit from the CEO and the chairman and the owners to say, go and build us a revenue driving media business. So when I started Liverpool, there wasn't that many people working on social media. It wasn't massive at the time. And, and growing that, I think, again, when you look back at all the career points from Fox Kids to Liverpool, you've got a grounding in the whole broadcast industry. So whether you're making a studio for live sport, for live academy football, or you're making an OTT platform, which we did, LSC TV Go, or you do a new web service, or you do an SWOD service, I think what it frames you for is understanding the full remit of the broadcast space and the media space, and how sport works. But also when you're with the directors of the club and you're on the sort of the exec board, you're learning at the business of sport. How does the business sport, how do you fit within the ecosystem, and how does sport progress, and how do you move a club forward, a league forward, a federation, and all those? You suddenly get exposure and understanding every layer of a sport, which is really, really interesting. So you've got your sort of day job in the media bit, but then you've got the holistic view, the macro view of sport in a whole. And I think that really prepares you for anything you do, because you can equate those elements to sort of any industry, but it's got a sports slant on it. And I think it really sets you in good stead. And I think one thing I would say about sport, especially from media side, and how does it set you up? I think, sport is about the fans. It's about the people who come and passionately embrace the sport. They're in the stadium, they're sitting in their house in New Zealand to Alaska, and everyone's in it and everyone feels the same thing. It doesn't matter where you come from, who you are. That feeling of support and passion and belonging and wanting to be with your club is wholly important. To have that relationship in any sport, don't care what the sport is absolutely critical.
No, 100%. So this next question, I think we touched on Dugout a little bit, but if you want to talk about how that kind of adapted through the pandemic, if we can touch on that.
I think it's important. I'm happy to. I think it's important to understand sort of where Dugout came from. And, Dugout was all about giving clubs the ability for reach, engagement, revenue and data. And, a lot of clubs have content. How do you get it out there and into the marketplace in a brand safe environment without without algorithms killing it, and get it and creating a network where you can monetize your content, but talk closer to the fan and understand the fan through data, give the fan proper engagement of your content. And where Dugout came from was very clever from the chairman, Elliot Richardson, was to sort of work out that actually fans across the world support 4.6 clubs. And at the time, that was a revelation, really, because especially in Asia, and other areas of the world, people support multiple clubs, and they also support multiple players as they go through. Gareth Bale, Southampton, Tottenham, Madrid, back to Tottenham. They follow players as well as clubs. Yes, you might have a passion point for a certain club, but you are a fan of that sport, and you follow a multiple amount of clubs. So bringing the clubs together and creating them. 10 of the clubs are shareholders in the business. I signed the contract for Liverpool to be a shareholder in Dugout, and they want to help across to grow it and run it and help grow it to where it is today. And I think today it's at 120 clubs. It's hundreds of 500 million views per month on a network worldwide, across. And it's about having contextually relevant content at the right time and access to your fans. So, how did they adapt during the pandemic? It's interesting, as you probably can see from your own behavior in the sphere of content, people are hungry for content all the time. And if it's contextually relevant about what's going on, yes, you can look at all the stuff from yesteryear and all that kind of stuff. And there's always anniversaries and there's always goals and there's always, but people want to know what's going on in training and how people are coming back. And people are digesting content all the time. And more so than ever now, content's become really important, especially when there was, at the beginning, there was no sport at all. Now football's back, yes, in a different way because there's no fans in the stadium. Fans are even more important than ever. They really want to know and feel as close to their club as they possibly can. So adapting is an interesting question, but I think it's just about understanding the environment you work in and giving the fans what they want.
Yeah.
If your consumers first and the fans first, you listen to what they want and see what they're using and see what they want to hear about, then you are in the right spot.
So just wanted to ask, Matthew, are you an advocate of the supporting 4.6 clubs each? Or?
Well, being born and bred in South London, I'm a Crystal Palace fan, and my granddad was had a house in the Holmesdale Road end, actually right there at Crystal Palace. So my family are born and bred Palace fans. My son and my girls and every part of my family is Crystal Palace. But growing up in the 70s and 80s, Vince Solaire time and all that Terry Venables era of Palace. I was a season ticket holder in the late 70s, early 80s when my father took me and my brother. But at the time, the only people you could see really on TV were the big teams. So my second team is Liverpool. So I was as well as having worked there, it was an honour to work there and a privilege. But they were my second team, so I've always had a passion for Liverpool. And then interestingly, through sort of going through Dugout and working at Liverpool and watching my son is now 10, and his behaviour is he loves Real Madrid, he loves Barcelona, and the same guys, and it would probably be unheard of a few years ago. Then he loves Paris Saint-Germain, and he loves Bayern Munich, and he loves Liverpool, and he loves Crystal Palace because he has to. But it's so yes, I think the 4.6 things is more prevalent now than ever because everybody wants to watch good content, good football, good players, and have access to what they're doing.
Yeah, and why not? I'll
tell you a quick story, whether this makes the podcast or not. But
please do. Yeah.
When you're in a taxi in Vietnam, what do you talk about? Where are you from? What's the weather like? And who do you support? Right? And the taxi driver said to me, I like MK Dons. I'm like, what? And this is in the middle of Vietnam. He goes, yeah, I like MK Dons. This is why is that? Because the first person he met to talk about football when he was a taxi driver supported MK Dons. So he now supports MK Dons. Yep. So that just shows you the globalization of any team in any football at any level.
Yep. Like I said, it's a universal language, isn't it? It's, wherever you go, that's something you can talk about. So branching off a little bit more from kind of Dugout and what they were doing to overcome and adapt during the pandemic, do you think that the pandemic had a major impact on the nature of sports rights? And do you think valuations have been affected by the temporary hiatus?
I think the pandemic has an effect on everybody, in every industry, and every person in the world. It's one of those we're in extraordinary times, right? And which has been said a lot this year. And I think in sport in particular, and we'll come on to Stellwagen Ventures and music, and I think it's the same thing. There's no fans watching music in touring. There's no fans in the stadium. People are watching it on TV more, and you can see in the UK, you're looking at the OTT platforms charging pay-per-view per matches, and there's been some interest around that. I think taking a step back, what I feel is that now is the time, and it has been in a good way, of true partnerships, really. Yes, there's some outliers, whatever, but I think generally speaking, whether you're a brand, a league, a federation, a broadcaster, a rights holder, everybody's had to come together to try and find a win-win solution. So if you're a brand working with a club and you've got activation in the stadium, how do you do virtual activations? Or how do you do, when you're talking about dugout or you're talking about digital content, how do you create more digital content that's rich for the consumer? So your rights package might have been X, but now it might be Y and slightly different. And I feel the way that, it's going to open up the market for more sponsors to come in at different levels, because there'll be different packages and there's a different way to think about it. Yeah. And, in the rights world, there, ultimately it's about the value and of the money they're giving to the leagues, and then the leagues and the money, how it flows down to grassroots and beyond. There is a structure there that has to exist. Otherwise, the game you're playing in has an impact. Whatever that impact is, it depends. So I think everybody in their right mind has actually pretty much stayed true to what they're trying to do for the good of the holistic game. And I think it's about, the word really is about how does everyone, and they are, working true partnership to get through this period, to come out the other side in even a clearer and a better way, in a more efficient way, maybe.
What's your general opinion concerning OTT in sports? And do you think non-linear content can ever, come close to the thrill of a live Champions League final?
Live sport is incredible. It's everything. It's tears, blood, sweat. It's sharing it with the person next to you. It's the stadium. It's the thrill. It's the smell of the grass, whatever you want to call it. You can go to rugby matches and you can hear the crunch of a tackle, or you're on a basketball game or the lights going off at an ice hockey game. It's the whole thing when you leave home, and some people have things they have to do on the way to the stadium. And I love that kind of stuff. I think it's brilliant. And the whole feeling of that coming together for an event is unique. But that said, some people can't go to those games. Some people can't go to. It can't be season ticket holders, or they can't get access to them. The world's big, right? So if you're a Liverpool fan and you're in Jakarta, how do you get to the stadium every week? You can't. So,
and we've got MK Don fans in Vietnam as well. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
That just illustrates it.
So how do you bring the key for OTT and the key for digital content is how do you bring the fans close to the stadium, or as close to that feeling as possible? Champions League final, brilliant, right? Fantastic. I've been very honoured and privileged and lucky to be able to go to Champions League finals, and they're a spectacle. They're great. But, that is, depending on the stadium, 30, 40, 50,000 people in the world could get to go and do that. So there has to be a space for OTT rights holders, and broadcasters to show that. But I think then you layer it down and understand the data and the fans and where they are and how they want to interact with that, to really bring them closer to the action as they possibly can be, in that feeling of having the passion of lots of people with them is the key. So whether, some people want to go down the pub and watch it, or some people want to sit at home with their friends, but understanding what they want is really important. And I think there's always going to be, OTT platforms give a lot of sports a lot of visibility that they may not have had. And it gives, and if the last few years, a lot of sports have got a lot more eyeballs than they would have had previously in that regard. So, yeah, I think there's room for all of them to fit together, but it has to be how and where you do it with the fan.
How do you feel about simulated crowd noise? I don't know if you've been watching any of Side of Boxing recently, or. It's
interesting. That's a great question. Do you know what? It's quite funny, because I've watched both, right? And it depends on who I'm watching, if I'm honest. So at the beginning, I watched the Liverpool game without the crowd noise, because I just wanted to hear the pitch, because it's very rare that you actually get to sort of, get them saying man on rather than the whole 40,000 people saying man on, and Arsenal moved, and you can hear the manager. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So it depends. To be honest, it depends on who I'm watching. So if I'm watching sport in general and it's like a team and I'm just enjoying it, I like the crowd noise, because I think it makes me feel like if I'm in the lounge, I'm just chilling out with family and it's on or whatever, I quite like the crowd noise. If I'm actually watching a game, I actually quite like the differentiation, because I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a pitch, like watching my son's under 10s. You can hear the manager shout, you can hear what's going on. It's a bit like that. You can really hear what's going on. So I understand some people don't like it, but I like the mix depending on what I'm watching. And they've done it very well. Sorry, on the simulated crowd noise, when you get like it hits the crossbar or whatever like that, you go, ooh. So they've actually done the simulated crowd noise very well, because it matches the action on the pitch. They could have quite happily just bled it on and just been it generic, but they've done it very well. So kudos to the people who've done that.
Yeah, in my head, I'm imagining it to be some engineer sat in a back room with just a kind of soundboard.
Do you like it?
It's a difficult one, because I've watched quite a bit of the boxing since it came back, and it's been wild to hear the actual lever of the gloves hit, and stuff like that. It's and you can hear the corners shouting to the fighters and stuff like that as well. So,
which is interesting, right?
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So I think at this point, I'm keen on anything that returns us to normality. So if I was to watch football, I'd want the crowd noise. But like you said, it has been really insightful to just hear, the natural sounds of the sport for once.
So when the fans get back in the stadium, maybe there's another option. No crowd noise, you switch them off. Maybe that's one of the new things we're going to find, right?
Mute them. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I think just to close out on the questions, Matthew, what do you see as the future for the sports broadcasting landscape in general?
Well, look, I think, sports broadcasting is not going anywhere. Again, it's about access for fans to get close to their sport. There's a proliferation of platforms, over the last few years, what the Zone's done with, you mentioned boxing, especially in the US and stuff like that. How do fans get to see at the right price and the right money what their sport is? And there's talk about different leagues, there's different structures. I think ultimately the industry's got to be careful not to have, there's a certain amount of budgets for fans, worldwide, and what you don't want to do is sort of too much proliferation, because it's saturated. You just don't want. You should be careful of saturation point with your fans. But then, that's the holistic view of all sports. But if you're focusing on your sport, how do I get my sport in front of the fans in the best way? And also making sure that you are reaching growth, because everyone wants to grow their sport. How do you make sure that when you're doing that in broadcasting, you are going with the right place to grow the sport in the right way? Is very important. So there's some key decisions to be made, and sometimes make sure that you are looking at the mid to long term view, not just the money or the opportunity in front of you. Make sure you look at the wider picture. So
for anyone who might not know about what you guys get up to at Stellwagen Ventures, could you just kind of provide a brief introduction to the company?
Yeah, sure. So interestingly, we started a company with my partner who lives in Boston, Jeff Walker. We created a company back earlier this year called Stellwagen Ventures. Really, it came out of the pandemic when we were talking about fans and touring with music and fans in the stadium, and there's an opportunity for helping companies, sport businesses, music businesses help monetize their assets of artists or whatever they've got during, because if you take music, touring is a huge revenue stream for artists where they make a lot of money. Suddenly that revenue's been cut off. So Stellwagen Ventures really blends itself down into sort of 5 verticals. We work in music, sport, media, entertainment, and investment. So if you take those verticals, in music, we're really looking at the IP rights and the sales of IP rights to give artists and bands a huge payday that they may not have seen before, and also because they're not getting paid now. So it's a very, very big hot topic in the industry at the moment, with people doing a lot of big deals. I mean, Calvin Harris, if anyone knows, Calvin Harris sold his streaming rights a few weeks ago, just nearly $100 million. So it's big business. It's making a lot of money. And, me and my partner, Jeff, were working on a deal when we were talking earlier this year. And, the market's moving fast. And, we're working on music deals of 7, 8, and 9 figures. And, it's a big, big business and a fast business and a growing business. So we're perfectly placed in that area. And then, in the investment side, we work on a number of investments. So we have a number of parties who are looking for seed through to ABC and growth funds for their business, everything from sports data play to entertainment businesses to a lot of areas of technical growth. So we're working with a lot of investors in that area. In the sports and media space, we're doing a lot of stuff in the partnership side we talked about previously in the podcast in terms of brands for clubs, activation, and helping agencies who've got talent grow their business into new sports. So it's a very, very nice portfolio and a very good blend. And we're very lucky to have built up a number of good key portfolio investors behind us who can help us grow the business, but also help those we work with drive their business in a very meaningful manner. And we over the course of, we officially launched on August the 17th, but we're working on it over this year. We've probably built up a pipeline across the board of nearly 40 pieces of business, which is meaningful revenue across the board, and a lot of those are converting. So very exciting time across all opportunities. So, and it's been fun. It's been really interesting to launch that business with Jeff in the pandemic, and you realize that there's still a hunger and a passion to get stuff done and want to find new ways and new methods. And I think that's what we provide. We've built up a very good, we call it sales force, but really there are people from our contact network who are out finding deals with us as well. And we share in that success. Our model is a shared success model. So anyone who finds deals or wants to go and work with us, we'll share in the upside and share in the deal at the end. So we've built up a number of people we work with for a win-win model. I think and then that really has helped drive the business in and drive the results we've seen. With the team around us. So it's been very good. And we've got an internship program. So we've got a few people out of Boston College who help us on the internship program. And we have a very, very strong PR company in Elude as well. So we've got a really good network already. And the future's looking good.
Yeah, and to have done all that during an unprecedented pandemic as well, it's really something, isn't it?
It is. It's been exciting, and let's be honest, no one's going anywhere. We're sitting at home and doing stuff, and timing's everything. Musicians and artists are really desperate to find out the value of their assets, and then working on the brand side in sport. How do we adapt the brands because there's no fans, and what are the sports clubs doing to attract new fans and how they work? So, a lot of the data businesses work with, they're absolutely flying because they're really helping those businesses do the clubs or sport business and what they're doing, And so it's been really interesting, long days, but fun days, finding ways to set up a new office at home, there's been, things like that is interesting, right? But, like music and sport, there's no switch off. And I think we're very, very well covered with Jeff being in Boston and me in the UK. We can make sure we're available 24/7, which has made us move at a very, very quick pace, which has been very helpful.
So there any kind of exciting projects that you can tell us that are in the pipeline for Stellwagen, or is everything quite under covers at the moment?
I think I can talk generically because obviously NDAs are important in life.
No, of course.
But I think, we are really at a very good space for, let's take each element really. In the music space, we've got a couple of dozen deals in the music space, and they vary from master rights to publishing rights and across the board, and we were working with all genres from DJs to popular music to folk music, country music, indie music, Latin music, you name it. We're working with it doesn't matter who or where you are in a band or an artist or, but we are, we're perfectly placed with the portfolio investors we've got because we can find your product and put it with the right investor to give you the right amount of money at the right multiple, right? So people are playing some very good multiples in this market. And, even if you don't want to sell your streaming rights, it's worth finding out the value of what your asset's about, a bit like selling your house, right? And then you can make a decision. So I think the good thing here is we've got some really good financial modeling people we work with who can help understand what that actually means for you going forward. So in the music space, finding as many artists and bands and music as possible and helping them find the value of their products. And there are a lot of people out there who want to invest in those assets. So we've got 24 pieces of business and growing at the moment. And in the sports space, there's a number of opportunities we're working on in multiple sports, cricket, esports, football, rugby, Formula One. And I think one of the things that's interesting, looking at pathways projects of how talent and athletes look in their journey, not everyone makes it or injuries. We're looking at some opportunities within that space for actually talent and athletes, which I think, that's kind of an important part. I'm quite enjoying investigating that part and how that works, and trying to work out with various clubs and various sports how we can put a pathways program in place is interesting. So look, we're all about growth of business and growth of sport. So, and then the key part is how do we create those partnerships within that area is very important. So probably we've got over 40 pieces in the pipeline and growing, and the team is growing. We have a number of people we're strategically working with and growing that business. So, that's what I can't really tell you more detail, but if you want to know more, you can. Being honest, if you want to know more, get in touch. You can probably find my details through this podcast, or head to stellwagenv.com, which is our website. And look, if you want to drop me an email or link in with me, I'm happily have a discussion or a conversation with anyone, because we're all in strange times, and if we can all help each other to win-win in whatever you're doing, that's the ethos of Stellwagen Ventures, right? It's a win-win model for everyone, and that's what the company was set up on, and that's what we want to try and achieve.
No, it sounds really great. So, you've already touched on how people can get in touch with you. So it's the website, which is stellwagenv.com.
That's right.
Or find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. You can find me on LinkedIn, exactly, and then very happy to take calls and chat to anybody. And I'd love to hear any opportunities and the structure behind us. We can touch on everything in music, sport, media, and entertainment. And investments. So yeah, I'm very happy to chat to anyone. Or if in pandemic, if people want some advice and they're trying to find their way as well, I'm very happy to offer an ear or a lending hand or a discussion. And if I can help anyone in any way, I'm also happy to have those conversations, because times are strange, and I think that's what, if everyone can lean in together and try and help each other, that's important. So if I can be of any help in that area, please shout.
I can only thank you for taking the time out this fine lockdown morning to speak to us on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Well, no, and thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity, and I really appreciate it. And look, it is interesting times, it is strange times, but I think as long as we are all looking after each other and staying safe and doing the things we should do, and and enjoy the things we like, whether that is sport, whether it's music, whether it's entertainment, whether it's whatever it may be, I think we've got to enjoy those things. And it's pretty stressful at times out there, and I think enjoy the fresh air where you can, get out, clear your head, and then enjoy some nice things, switch on some nice music, watch some good sport, and and we'll come out the other side.
Yeah, definitely. I've been very impressed by the resolve of people.
Exactly. We find out stuff about ourselves, and I think that's part of our own personal journey. And I think what I've seen where I live is the growing sense of community and helping people out, which I really like. And I think, if we can all do that in work and business, I think we're only going to be in the right direction. No,
100%. I think that's a great note to end on, Matthew. So again, thanks so much for coming on and speaking to us today. It's been really appreciated.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it too. Cheers.